Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today, we're diving into one of the most shocking and heartbreaking twists in Little People, Big World History. Matt Roloff recently transferred half of Roloff Farm to his fiancée, Caryn Chandler, but unexpectedly, Caryn sold her share to an Australian businessman for $2 million. After the sale, she permanently left Matt Roloff and married her secret boyfriend. Caryn Chandler's betrayal deeply broke Matt Roloff's heart. Matt Roloff later filed a lawsuit against Caryn Chandler in court. According to the court's verdict, Caryn Chandler was sentenced to 8 months in prison. After this incident, Matt Roloff's ex-wife Amy Roloff and her husband Chris Murrick claimed that they too deserve a share of the farm's ownership. Their argument was that the farm had been part of the family's legacy for many years, and therefore, they too could rightfully claim ownership of the property. As a result, new disputes and tensions erupted within the Roloff family over the ownership of the farm. As the conflict reached its peak, Amy and Chris took Matt to court. After weeks of heated battles, the verdict came down. Matt Roloff was ordered to apologize publicly to Amy and Chris. He also had to transfer a portion of Roloff Farm to them. The once united Roloff legacy had now been divided forever. Stay tuned, because this story has everything: love, betrayal, money, and the fight for family legacy. It started quietly, like most tragedies do. Matt Roloff had always been a man of vision. He wasn't content with what already existed. He wanted to build, expand, and dream beyond limits. Caryn Chandler admired that about him. She had seen him struggle through surgeries, family disputes, and TV fame, and she admired his resilience. Or so he believed. In late spring, under the soft Oregon breeze, Matt called his lawyer and made the decision. He would officially transfer 50% ownership of Roloff Farms to Caryn Chandler. To him, it was love made legal. A declaration that she wasn't just his partner, but his future. "Caryn's been my rock," he told a local reporter. "She deserves to be part of this legacy." The paperwork was done in a quiet office in downtown Portland. Caryn smiled as she signed, her hands steady, her voice calm. To anyone watching, it looked like a fairy tale moment, the next chapter of a beautiful love story. But what no one saw was the flicker in her eyes when she glanced at the final page. The clause that gave her full rights to sell her share at any time. Matt didn't question it. He trusted her completely. For weeks, everything seemed normal. They filmed together for TLC, hosted fans at the Pumpkin Festival, and laughed over dinner like any couple in love. But something inside Caryn had shifted. She had been receiving calls late at night, hushed conversations, whispered laughter, numbers saved under fake names. One afternoon, while Matt was inspecting a new barn design, Caryn met a man named Ethan Moreau, a Canadian investor from Vancouver. He was charming, calculated, and persuasive. Over coffee, he told her he'd been following the show for years, that he admired her strength and independence. Slowly, their meetings turned into dates, and those dates into secrets. Within 3 months, Caryn had made her decision. On a quiet Friday morning, she met with Ethan's legal team in Portland. They offered her $2.5 million for her share of Roloff Farms. Caryn didn't hesitate. She signed the contract, shook hands, and smiled. That same evening, Matt came home early from filming and found her suitcase by the door. She didn't cry. She didn't explain. She just said softly, "I'm sorry, Matt, but I can't do this anymore." By Monday, she was gone. Matt stood alone in the living room, surrounded by silence. The woman he trusted most had taken half his world and sold it to a stranger. But the worst was yet to come. Because Matt Roloff wasn't just a man who built farms. He was a man who fought for what was his. And this time, he wasn't backing down. The morning after Caryn left, the farmhouse felt like a ghost house. Matt Roloff wandered through the kitchen, her mug by the sink, her perfume still lingering in the air. Silence filled the place that once overflowed with laughter. Days passed without a word. Matt shut off his phone, canceled filming, and roamed the empty fields. Every barn, every corner whispered the same word: betrayal. When he finally turned his phone back on, headlines screamed the truth. Greater than Caryn Chandler sells half of Roloff Farms for $2.5 million. Canadian investor buys into the Roloff legacy. Then came the letter, official, cold, and stamped with Morrow Holdings Incorporated. Ethan Morrow was now co-owner of Roloff Farms, planning to redevelop it into commercial property. Matt's life's work was no longer his own. That was the moment he broke. He called his lawyer, Daniel Kessler, the same man who'd stood by him through his divorce from Amy. She sold it? Matt whispered, eyes hollow. Daniel nodded grimly. Then we fight. That night, under a dim desk lamp, Matt signed the papers that launched a legal war, not for land, but for his dignity. The lawsuit against Caryn Chandler for fraud and breach of trust exploded in the media. Fans took sides. Some called Caryn a traitor. Others blamed Matt's blind love. Caryn, now in Vancouver with Ethan, denied everything. But her downfall came from her own words, an email she thought deleted. Matt will never find out. I'll finalize the paperwork next week, and then we're free. That single line changed everything. Forensic recovery made it public, and the courtroom erupted when Daniel presented it. Caryn froze, Ethan's jaw clenched, and Matt sat silent. Heartbroken, not hateful. The judge read the charges: fraudulent concealment, breach of contract, emotional distress. Caryn's lawyer argued love and business should stay separate. Daniel showed proof otherwise. Bank records, dates, the damning email. When court adjourned, Caryn's image was in ruins. Outside, a reporter shouted, "Mr. Roloff, do you still love her?" Matt paused. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I know what's right." He walked away, unaware that justice was about to take an even darker turn. One that might send Caryn Chandler not just out of his life, but behind bars. The courthouse in downtown Portland buzzed with anticipation. Fans of Little People, Big World, reporters, and legal analysts filled every seat, all waiting to witness Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler face each other for the first time since their bitter fallout. Inside, tension hung thick. Matt sat beside his lawyer, Daniel Kessler, eyes fixed ahead. Across the aisle, Caryn adjusted her pearl necklace while her attorney whispered. Beside her sat Ethan Morrow, the man whose quiet presence had ignited this storm. The judge entered. The court will now hear the case of Matthew Roloff versus Caryn Chandler regarding fraudulent misrepresentation, emotional distress, and breach of trust in the sale of Roloff Farms. Daniel stood, calm but sharp. "This isn't about money, Your Honor. It's about betrayal. My client gave Ms. Chandler not only half his farm but his trust. She repaid that trust with deceit, secretly selling her share for $2.5 million while planning a new life with another man." An email appeared on the courtroom screen. "Matt will never find out. I'll finalize the paperwork next week, then we're free." A collective gasp filled the room. Caryn's face went pale. Matt's voice broke as he testified. "Roloff Farms isn't just land. It's my family, my legacy. She didn't just sell property. She sold my trust." Caryn took the stand next. "I loved him," she said quietly. "But love isn't ownership. I had the right to sell my share." Daniel countered with one final blow, a contract drafted before the property transfer was finalized. The courtroom froze. Caryn stumbled through her answer. The truth was clear. After 4 tense days, the verdict came. The court finds the defendant, Caryn Chandler, guilty of fraudulent misrepresentation and breach of trust. She will serve 6 months in county jail and pay $1.2 million in restitution. Reporters swarmed outside as Caryn was led away in tears. Matt said softly, "I never wanted revenge. Only the truth." The cameras flashed one last time. "Love can build an empire," Matt whispered, "but when trust dies, everything falls." Yet even as the doors of the courthouse closed, new whispers began. Amy Roloff and Chris Merrick were ready to step forward with revelations that could reopen every old wound. The gavel had fallen and justice was served, or so the world believed. But for Matt Roloff, victory felt empty. The fields of Roloff Farms were quieter than ever, haunted by memories of love, loss, and betrayal. Caryn was gone, and though the court had ruled in his favor, the farm now felt like a graveyard of everything he once cherished. For weeks, Matt buried himself in work, mending fences, cleaning barns, trying to convince himself life was moving on. But the truth lingered in every shadow. He had lost more than a partner. He had lost peace. Then one evening, Amy Roloff returned. She arrived with her husband, Chris Merrick, as the sun set over the red barn. Seeing her there again felt surreal. "Amy," Matt said quietly. She smiled. "It's been a long time since I've been here." Chris stepped forward. "We came to talk about the farm." Matt frowned. "What about it?" Amy took a deep breath. "Matt, you built this land, but we built this life together. Every pumpkin, every memory, every dream started with us. You gave half to Caryn, and she sold it away. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for fairness, for legacy." Chris added firmly, "The Roloff name belongs to both of you. Maybe it's time to make things right." Matt's expression hardened. "Amy, you sold your share years ago. You moved on." "Maybe," she said softly, "but peace built on silence isn't real peace." That night, after they left, Matt sat alone under the stars, wrestling with the truth. Amy was right. The farm wasn't just land. It was the heart of their family. But before he could act, the morning brought shocking news. Amy and Chris had filed a lawsuit against Matt Roloff, claiming shared entitlement to Roloff Farms for legacy contributions. Headlines exploded. Amy Roloff takes Matt back to court. Roloff Farms faces a new family battle. And once again, Matt found himself standing before the courthouse. But this time, his opponent wasn't a former fiancée. It was Amy, the woman who had built the dream beside him. And deep down, Matt knew this fight would cut far deeper than the last. When the headlines broke, Amy and Chris sue Matt Roloff over farm ownership. The internet exploded with speculation. Fans took sides, tabloids dug up old interviews, and social media was flooded with theories about greed, revenge, and broken promises. But behind the noise, inside the Roloff family itself, something much darker was brewing. For the first time in decades, the Roloffs were divided, not by geography or careers, but by loyalty. Zach Roloff heard the news first. He was at home with Tori and the kids when his phone buzzed with a message from a friend. "Hey man, what's going on with your parents? This court thing is all over the news." Zach froze. He clicked the link and read the headline, his heart sinking. Tori looked up from the couch. "What happened?" He turned the screen toward her. "Mom's suing Dad." Tori blinked. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." The two sat in silence for a long time, the weight of it sinking in. Zach had always tried to stay neutral, especially after years of watching his parents' arguments play out both privately and on television. But this was different. This wasn't about words or feelings. It was about the land they all grew up on, the place where every memory lived. Later that night, Zach called his mother. "Amy, why?" he asked quietly. Her voice was steady but tired. "Because I built that farm too, Zach. Your dad may have drawn the blueprints, but I put my heart into it. It's not about revenge. It's about recognition." Zach hesitated. "And you think this is the way to get it?" "By going to court." "Sometimes," she said softly, "you have to fight for what's right, even if it hurts." Zach didn't reply. When he hung up, his heart ached. He knew she wasn't wrong, but he also knew his father, stubborn, proud, and emotionally shattered after Caryn's betrayal. A new lawsuit would crush him. Meanwhile, Jeremy Roloff, Zach's brother, had a different reaction. He'd been living quietly with his wife Audrey, away from the cameras, focused on his own projects. But when the lawsuits surfaced, old frustrations reignited. Jeremy had long believed that the family's legacy should stay in the family, not in contracts or TV drama. He called Matt directly. "Dad, I'm with you," Jeremy said. "You built that farm. You've kept it alive. Mom sold her share years ago. She made that choice." Matt sighed into the phone. "I didn't want this, Jer. I just wanted peace." "Then fight for it," Jeremy urged. "Don't let them take what's yours." Molly and Jacob, the younger Roloff children, wanted no part of the conflict. Molly, now living in Washington, told reporters she loved both parents and hoped for reconciliation. Jacob, on the other hand, wrote a single cryptic tweet. "Farms can be rebuilt. Families can't." But it was too late. The lines had already been drawn. Zach stood by Amy, quietly supporting her right to claim part of the legacy. Jeremy stood beside Matt, ready to defend his father's hard work. Molly withdrew, and Jacob disappeared from the public eye entirely. The Roloffs, once America's most beloved reality family, were now fractured beyond repair. At the next court hearing, the tension was unbearable. Matt and Amy avoided eye contact, their lawyers handling every word. Chris sat beside Amy, composed but clearly uneasy. Zach arrived silently, sitting behind his mother, while Jeremy stood near the back with folded arms, his expression cold. The cameras outside captured everything, flashes of heartbreak, anger, and disbelief. And as the hearing adjourned, Amy walked past Matt for the first time in months. He looked at her, not with hate, but with something far heavier: regret. "Amy," he said quietly, "is this really what we've become?" She paused at the door. "No, Matt. This is what we've always been. We just stopped pretending." Her words hung in the air long after she left. That night, the Roloff children called each other, one by one, not to argue, but to mourn. Mourn the family dinners that would never happen again. Mourn the laughter that once filled the farm. And mourn the simple truth that somewhere along the line, love had turned into litigation. But no one knew that the storm was far from over. Because in the weeks to come, the fight for Roloff Farms would uncover secrets buried deeper than anyone imagined. Secrets that could shatter the family forever. Rain fell steadily over Hillsborough that week. A cold, heavy rain that mirrored the tension surrounding Roloff Farms. The lawsuit between Matt and Amy had already shaken the family to its core, but no one expected the twist that was about to surface. It began with a phone call. "Daniel, you need to see this," said Linda Crawford, a former Roloff Farms assistant. She claimed to have found old financial records in a forgotten cabinet. Matt's attorney, Daniel Kessler, drove to the farm through the downpour. Inside a dusty shed, Linda handed him a box labeled Farm Legacy Records 2003 to 2011. "What's in it?" he asked. "Proof," she whispered, "that the farm's ownership might not be what everyone thinks." In his office, Daniel opened the box: contracts, notes, early deeds. But one document stood out: a 2007 draft titled Roloff Farms Family Partnership Agreement. It wasn't signed, but it bore Amy's handwriting, with comments from Matt and a blank witness line. The proposal outlined equal legacy shares for Matt, Amy, and their 4 children. Daniel froze. If authenticated, it could prove Amy and the kids had a rightful claim to the farm's legacy, even without execution. When Daniel showed Matt the document, Matt's face darkened. "I remember this. Amy brought it up years ago, but it was never finalized." "Maybe not," Daniel said, "but it shows intent. And that changes everything." Across town, Amy's lawyer, Patricia Nolan, received the same document anonymously. Amy's eyes widened as she read it. "He told me he destroyed this." Patricia smiled. "If this is real, it proves the farm was meant to be shared. That could change the entire case." Amy traced her handwriting, her voice soft. "This was supposed to unite us, not tear us apart." At the next hearing, Both sides presented the same evidence. So, the judge asked, "You both confirm this was written during your marriage?" "Yes, Your Honor," Amy said. Matt nodded silently. "The court will consider this document as a material exhibit," the judge declared. The courtroom erupted, reporters whispering, lawyers exchanging glances. The stakes had just exploded. Outside, a journalist called out, "Mr. Roloff, did you hide the original contract?" Matt clenched his jaw. "No, it was never real, just an idea." Amy replied quietly, "Ideas can still mean something." That night, Matt sat alone in his office, rain tapping against the glass. On his desk lay the old blueprint of Roloff Farms, a reminder of simpler days. He stared at it and whispered, "How did we get here?" Because the truth was clear now, the past never truly disappears. It just waits, buried in boxes and memories, for the perfect storm to bring it back. By mid-autumn, the quiet countryside of Hillsborough was anything but peaceful. Roloff Farms, once the pride of Oregon, had become the center of national attention again. News vans lined the country road, journalists camped outside the gate, and every major tabloid had the same headline: "Family Farm Fallout. Amy versus Matt. The war for Roloff legacy heats up." Inside the farmhouse, Matt sat by the window, the weight of the past few months pressing heavily on his chest. He had faced betrayal before, first from Caryn, now from the people he once called family. But this time, the battlefield wasn't the heart. It was the courtroom. At the latest hearing, Amy's lawyer, Patricia Nolan, arrived with a new strategy. She presented the family partnership draft not as a forgotten proposal, but as evidence of intent. Her argument was simple and devastating. "Your Honor," she said confidently, "Roloff Farms was always envisioned as a shared family enterprise. My client's handwriting on this document, along with notes from Mr. Roloff himself, clearly establishes that there was an understanding, if not a binding contract, that the farm would one day belong to all Roloffs, not just one." Daniel Kessler, representing Matt, stood to object. That document was never executed, never notarized, and never filed. It's a concept, not a contract. But the judge wasn't convinced. He adjusted his glasses and said, "Mr. Kessler, the law recognizes intent as a factor in partnership cases, particularly when one party benefits disproportionately from shared marital labor. I'll be allowing this document into record." Matt's stomach dropped. He felt the ground shifting beneath him. The media frenzy exploded overnight. On talk shows and podcasts, commentators debated whether Matt had robbed Amy of her legacy. Former Little People, Big World fans flooded social media with messages like, "Greater than Amy deserves her share. Matt's gotten greedy." This is what happens when you mix love with land. Even longtime supporters began questioning his actions. The man once celebrated for his resilience was now painted as controlling, unwilling to share credit or history. And for the first time in his life, Matt Roloff, the dreamer, the builder, the face of family television, felt completely misunderstood. He stopped giving interviews. He stopped filming. He even stopped answering Jeremy's calls, afraid that every conversation would turn into another debate about the farm. One evening, Daniel arrived at the farmhouse with a grim look on his face. "Matt," he said, "you need to understand. The case is tilting. The judge is leaning toward Amy's side. The public pressure, the document, the emotional weight. It's all stacking up against us." Matt rubbed his temples. "So what are you saying? That I'm going to lose the farm?" Daniel hesitated. "Not all of it. But there's a real chance you'll be forced to divide ownership, maybe even compensate Amy and Chris financially." Matt slammed his hand on the table. "This is my life's work, Daniel. I built this from nothing. How can a piece of paper and a few headlines erase that?" Daniel looked at him quietly, because sometimes perception becomes reality. A week later, the court requested a forensic evaluation of Roloff Farms' financial records, a process that would expose every sale, transaction, and partnership deal going back 20 years. It wasn't just a legal blow, it was a personal invasion. The farm that had been Matt's pride was now an open book, dissected by strangers. During cross-examination, Amy spoke softly but powerfully. "Matt worked hard," she said, "but so did I. So did our kids. I'm not here for revenge. I just want what's fair, what was promised." Her calm words landed like daggers. Even the judge seemed moved. When it was Matt's turn to speak, his voice trembled. "I never meant to take anything away from anyone. I just wanted to protect the farm, to keep it whole, to keep it ours." The courtroom fell silent, but the damage was done. The judge called a recess, stating he would issue a preliminary ruling in the coming weeks. Outside, cameras flashed as Matt left the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions, but he said nothing. He climbed into his truck, closed the door, and sat for a long moment, staring at the steering wheel. For the first time, Matt Roloff, the man who had fought giants all his life, realized that some battles couldn't be won with strength alone. They could only be survived. 6 months had passed since Caryn Chandler's sentencing. Roloff Farms still stood, scared but surviving. Matt told himself the worst was over. He was wrong. One cold November morning, his attorney, Daniel Kessler, rushed into the office, breathless. "Matt," he said, "we've got a problem. Ethan Morrow is back." The name hit like thunder. Ethan, the Canadian investor who'd seduced Caryn and bought half the farm, had reappeared. Daniel laid a folder on the desk. He just filed a claim through Morrow Holdings. Legally, he still owns 50% of Roloff Farms. Matt's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Caryn was forced to return the money. "Yes," Daniel replied, "but the paperwork transferring ownership back to you was never properly filed. A missing signature, and now he has grounds." By week's end, headlines blazed across the internet. Canadian investor reclaims Roloff Farms. Ethan Morrow returns. Legal storm in Oregon. Amy called Matt that night. "Tell me this isn't real." "I wish I could," he said quietly. Chris joined the call. "Can you fight it?" Daniel's voice came through the speaker. "We can, but it won't be easy. His claim is legally sound, unless we find proof of fraud." Matt muttered, "He doesn't want the farm. He wants revenge." Days later, Ethan arrived in Oregon, calm, confident, and flanked by reporters. "I'm simply reclaiming what's legally mine," he told the cameras. "Business is business. Emotions don't belong in real estate." Matt watched the clip that night, fury simmering. "That man destroyed my life and calls it business." Zach came by the next morning. "Dad, we can't let him win." Matt looked out the window. "Then we won't." Soon after, Daniel uncovered something explosive. Morrow Holdings was under investigation in Canada for fraudulent land deals. One of Ethan's partners had already turned witness. "If we connect that fraud to his Oregon purchase," Daniel said, "his claim collapses." Matt nodded grimly. "Then let's bring him down." But Ethan wasn't done. 2 nights later, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. Matt stepped outside into the rain. "You've got nerves showing up here," he said. Ethan smirked. "Relax. Just a chat." "You said enough already." Ethan's smile hardened. "I don't care about the land, Matt. I care about watching you lose it." He turned and left, tires hissing on wet gravel. That night, Matt stood by his window, watching the storm sweep over the darkened fields. Roloff Farms had become a battlefield, but he wasn't ready to surrender. Because if Ethan Morrow thought he could take it without a fight, he was about to learn that a Roloff never gives up. Fog blanketed Roloff Farms that morning. Thick, gray, and still, it swallowed the fences, the trees, even the farmhouse itself. To Matt Roloff, it felt like a reflection of his life, clouded by court battles, betrayals, and scars that wouldn't fade. But beneath that fog, something inside him reignited. The builder, the fighter, the man who refused to surrender. For months, he had been reacting. Now he was ready to strike back. Daniel Kessler sat across the kitchen table, papers and coffee mugs scattered between them. "Matt," he said, "we have one shot. If we prove Ethan's purchase was tied to financial fraud in Canada, his ownership collapses under international law." Matt nodded firmly. "Then let's dig, whatever it takes." Daniel leaned forward. "I already started. Ethan's company, Morrow Holdings, is linked to a shell firm in British Columbia under RCMP investigation. If we trace the $2.5 million transfer to that firm, we'll have been cornered." Matt's lips curled into a determined smile. "Good, let's end this." Within days, Daniel brought in Claire Montrose, a fearless Canadian investigator known for exposing corporate fraud. Her first report arrived a week later. Funds from Morrow Holdings traced to shell company Mariner Estates Oldhead, under active RCMP investigation. Daniel's eyes widened. "This is it, Matt. The proof we needed." Matt clenched his fists. "Then we move, now." At the next hearing, the courthouse buzzed with tension. Reporters crowded the halls. Amy, Chris, and Zach watched from the back rows. Daniel stood tall. "Your Honor," he said, "Mr. Morrow's purchase of Roloff Farms was funded through corporations now under federal investigation in Canada. We request an immediate freeze of his ownership." Ethan's attorney objected, but Daniel held his ground. "These aren't allegations," he said. "They're verified by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police." The judge reviewed the documents in silence, then delivered his ruling. Greater than pending resolution of the Canadian investigation, all ownership rights held by Mr. Ethan Morrow in Roloff Farms are hereby suspended. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Ethan went pale. Matt exhaled, relief and defiance in his eyes. Outside, flashing cameras swarmed him. He faced them briefly and said, "Roloff Farms was built on honesty and hard work. It won't fall to lies." Then he turned and walked away. No anger, just quiet strength. That night, as thunder rolled over the Oregon hills, Matt stood at the edge of his fields. The fight wasn't over. Amy's case still lingered, and Ethan's fraud probe was far from done. But for the first time in years, he felt in control. He whispered into the wind, "You can try to take my farm, but you'll never take my fight." And as lightning cracked across the sky, Matt Roloff knew the storm wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Weeks after the courtroom victory against Ethan Morrow, the Oregon skies finally cleared. The storms that had hung over Roloff Farms drifted away, leaving soft light and quiet mornings. The land was calm again, but Amy Roloff's heart wasn't. She should have felt victorious. Ethan's downfall proved Matt had trusted the wrong person. The headlines painted the Roloffs as survivors, not victims. Yet to Amy, the win felt hollow. Every time she looked at the lawsuit papers on her dining table, all she saw was more pain. One evening, as the sun faded behind the trees, Chris Merrick found her staring into the distance, tea cooling in her hands. "You're thinking about him again, aren't you?" he asked softly. Amy sighed. "About everything. I thought this case would bring closure, but it's just reopened old wounds." Chris nodded. "You're fighting for what's fair." "Maybe," she said, her voice breaking a little, "but at what cost? The kids are drifting apart. Matt's barely holding on. And I'm just tired, Chris." He took her hand. "Then maybe it's time to choose. Being right or being free." Amy gave a sad smile. "Sometimes those don't live in the same house." The next morning, Amy made her choice. She drove to Roloff Farms. No cameras, no lawyers, just silence and memory. The fields still smelled of pumpkin and rain. Near the barn, Matt was hammering a loose board. When she called out, "Need a hand?" He turned, startled, then smiled, wary but genuine. "Well, look who's here," he said. "I didn't expect me either," she replied. They stood in silence before Amy spoke. When we bought this land, I thought it would always stand for something good, but now it just feels cursed. Matt shook his head gently. It's not cursed, Amy. We just forgot what it stood for. Maybe we both did, she said softly. Then, after a long pause, Amy whispered, I'm ending the case. Matt stared at her. You mean dropping it? I'm tired of fighting. The farm needs peace, and so do we. Matt exhaled, emotion catching in his throat. Amy, I don't even know what to say. Say thank you, she said with a faint smile. That night, Amy told Chris. He just held her hand and said, I'm proud of you. The next morning, her lawyer filed the withdrawal. The news spread quickly. But this time, it wasn't scandal, it was peace. Fans called it the end of an era. And when reporters asked Matt for comment, he simply said, maybe this is the first right thing that's happened in a long time. As autumn deepened and gold leaves drifted across Roloff farms, Amy stood once more at the edge of the fields where it all began. For the first time in years, she felt light. Because sometimes, justice isn't about winning. It's about knowing when to stop fighting. Amy Roloff withdraws her lawsuit, and the family finally heals. For once, the headlines were calm. Amy Roloff officially withdraws lawsuit against ex-husband Matt Roloff. There was no drama, no accusations, just peace. Fans called it the closure the Roloffs deserved. But the real healing happened quietly on the farm. The day after the case ended, Matt got a call from Zach. Their last talk had ended in anger, but this time Zach's voice was soft. Hey, Dad, maybe it's time we all stop fighting. Matt hesitated, then smiled. Yeah, maybe it is. A week later, the Roloffs came together for dinner. No cameras, no crew, just family. Amy brought her famous apple pie. Matt set the table, and soon the farmhouse filled with laughter and stories from old times. Jeremy joked about getting the tractor stuck. Molly shared pumpkin season memories, and the kids listened with wide eyes. Even Amy and Matt laughed together again, not as a couple, but as friends rebuilding trust. When Chris raised his glass and said, "To peace, the hardest thing we've ever built," everyone clinked glasses and smiled. Later that night, Amy and Matt stood on the porch, watching the moon rise over the barn. "Think this peace will last?" Matt asked. Amy nodded gently. "It will, if we take care of it." And for the first time in years, the Roloffs were simply a family again, imperfect, healing, and finally at peace. The mist that usually hung over the field seemed thinner, and the air carried the faint scent of soil and renewal. For years, the land had been a battlefield of emotions: love, betrayal, lawsuits, heartbreak. But now, for the first time in a long while, it felt like home again. Matt Roloff stepped out onto the porch, his coffee steaming in the chill morning air. He looked out over the acres of farmland, rows of pumpkins, apple trees, and the weathered red barn standing tall like a survivor of every storm. He smiled softly to himself. Still standing, he whispered. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Amy walked out, bundled in a light sweater, her hair tied back just like she used to wear it during the early filming days. She carried 2 muffins in her hand. "I thought you might need breakfast," she said. Matt chuckled. "You never change." "Neither do you," she replied with a grin. "Still up before the sun." They sat side by side on the porch steps, eating in quiet companionship. There were no cameras, no scripts, no pressure. Just 2 people who had finally stopped fighting long enough to remember what it meant to build something together. Later that day, Amy walked with Matt across the property. The fields stretched endlessly, glimmering in the morning dew. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking. This farm has been through so much. Our love, our family, even our failures. Maybe it's time it stands for something new." Matt looked at her curiously. "Like what?" "Like healing," she replied. "Maybe we reopen Roloff Farms not as a family business, but as a family foundation. A place where people come not just to see pumpkins, but to learn about resilience, about family, about never giving up." Matt paused. A foundation? Yeah, Amy said with a nod. We could host workshops, family retreats, maybe even programs for little people who want to farm or build businesses of their own. Let this land mean something again, not just for us, but for others. For a long moment, Matt said nothing. He just looked out at the fields. Then slowly he nodded. I like that, he said quietly. Roloff Farms, a place for second chances. Amy smiled. That sounds like the perfect tagline. Over the next few weeks, Matt and Amy began making calls, gathering support, and reaching out to local community organizations. Chris helped with logistics, and even Jeremy and Zach got involved. One handling digital promotion, the other helping with field planning and safety. The transformation was subtle at first, clearing debris, repainting the barn, restoring the windmill. But it wasn't just the property that was being rebuilt. It was the people. The Roloffs were reconnecting, finding new ways to work together without reopening old scars. One Saturday, as they stood near the entrance gate, Matt hammered a new wooden sign into place. Amy held the paintbrush steady as he added the final touch. The sign read, Roloff Farms, a place for second chances. When he stepped back, Amy's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. Matt smiled. Took us a few years to figure it out, huh? Just a few, she said, laughing through the emotion. By autumn, the farm reopened quietly. No TV crew, no advertisements. Families from nearby towns came to visit, drawn by the idea of hope and renewal. Matt watched as children ran through the pumpkin patches, laughing the same way his kids once had. Amy greeted guests with her homemade pies and warm hugs, just like old times. The farm had changed, not in structure, but in spirit. It no longer carried the weight of what had been lost. It carried the promise of what could still be found. As the sun dipped low over the Oregon horizon, Amy and Matt stood side by side again. Do you think the world will remember us for all the drama? Amy asked softly. Matt shook his head. No. They'll remember what we built and how we found our way back. For the first time in years, Amy believed him. The legacy of Roloff Farms had been restored, not by contracts or court rulings, but by forgiveness, compassion, and the courage to start over. And as twilight settled across the fields, the sign swayed gently in the breeze. A symbol of everything they had learned, everything they had lost, and everything they had finally reclaimed. While peace slowly returned to Roloff Farms, a new storm was brewing far from Oregon. One that would end the saga of Ethan Moreau once and for all. In Vancouver, the sleek towers of downtown glimmered in the morning light. But inside Moreau Holdings Incorporated, silence reigned. Employees whispered nervously as government officials and investigators filled the boardroom. At the head of the table stood Inspector Claire Montrose, the same woman who had helped expose Ethan's fraud in Oregon. She opened a file and said calmly, "Greater than we have enough evidence to proceed with formal charges." For months, the RCMP had been tracing Ethan's shady property dealings across Canada. The trail led straight to Mariner Estates Ltd., a shell company used in illegal real estate transactions, including the infamous $2.5 million Roloff Farms deal. The findings exploded across the news. Greater than Vancouver mogul charged with fraud and money laundering. Former TLC connection linked to U.S. farm scandal. Back in Oregon, Matt watched the headlines quietly from his living room. He didn't celebrate. He simply murmured, "It's over." Amy, sitting beside him, said softly, "I guess justice found its way after all." Matt nodded. Eventually, it always does. Within weeks, Ethan's empire collapsed. His assets were frozen, his partners fled, and cameras swarmed as investigators hauled boxes from his penthouse. When a reporter shouted, "Did you launder U.S. property money?" Ethan said nothing. The man who once claimed emotions don't belong in real estate now walked with the weight of ruin. By spring, the verdict was announced. Greater than Ethan Moreau found guilty of financial fraud and money laundering, sentenced to 8 years in prison, and ordered to pay restitution to Roloff Farms. The ruling made global headlines. The man who had nearly stolen Matt's legacy was stripped of everything. Soon after, Matt received official notice restoring full legal ownership of Roloff Farms. It was finally, undeniably his again. That evening, he drove to the farm gate as the sun dipped behind the hills. The air was calm, the fields bathed in gold. For the first time in years, the land felt whole. Amy arrived with 2 mugs of coffee. "No cameras today," she teased. Matt smiled. "Not today." They stood together, watching the sunset over the farm that had survived it all. "I used to see this place as a reminder of what we lost," Amy said. "Now it feels like proof of what we endured." Matt nodded. "That's the difference between people like us and people like Ethan. We build, they take, and in the end, builders always outlast thieves." In prison, Ethan faded into silence, his empire gone. But in Oregon, Roloff Farms thrived once more, not as a reality show backdrop, but as a symbol of resilience. The sign at the entrance read, "Roloff Farms, a place for second chances." And as the spring sun rose over the fields, Matt whispered, "Greater than the land is finally free." Spring arrived early that year in Hillsboro. The air was fresh, the fields green again, and for the first time in years, Roloff Farms felt alive. The scars of betrayal and legal wars had begun to fade, replaced by laughter, teamwork, and something the Roloffs hadn't felt in a long time: unity. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It began quietly with small steps. A phone call here, a shared meal there, and long overdue apologies that softened even the hardest hearts. The Roloff family, once splintered by conflict, was learning how to rebuild itself from the ground up. Matt sat at his old drafting table, the same one he'd used decades ago when designing the original farm layout. But this time, the blueprints before him weren't barns or fences. They were plans for the Roloff family foundation. Across the top, in bold handwriting, he'd written, "Greater than helping families grow, one seed at a time." Amy joined him in the study, carrying a binder filled with notes. "You really think this can work?" she asked, glancing over his shoulder. Matt grinned. "It has to. This land gave us everything. Now it's time we give something back." The foundation's mission was simple but powerful: to support small family farms, fund accessibility projects for little people, and offer scholarships to children of farmers who faced physical or financial hardship. It wasn't about business anymore, it was about purpose. Chris helped organize outreach programs, while Amy handled the fundraising events.
All the time.
Zach focused on accessibility design, Jeremy built the website, and even Molly contributed her accounting expertise from Washington. For the first time in years, every Roloff was working together. By early summer, Roloff Farms hosted its first community event under the foundation's banner, the Harvest of Hope Festival. Families from across Oregon arrived to celebrate the relaunch of the farm. There were hair rides, local craft booths, and live music from a nearby high school band. But the heart of the event was the new community greenhouse, a space Matt and Amy had designed together to teach sustainable farming. As the crowd gathered, Amy took the microphone. Her voice trembled slightly, but her smile was steady. "Years ago, this farm was our dream," she began. "Then, for a while, it became our battlefield. But today, it's something else. A reminder that no matter how far we fall, families can always rise again." The crowd applauded. Matt stood beside her, hands folded, a quiet pride in his eyes. When it was his turn to speak, he simply said, "If you ever visit this farm, don't just look at the crops. Look at the people who built them. That's where the real roots are." It was simple, honest, and perfect. That evening, after the crowd had left and the lanterns flickered softly in the wind, the family gathered around a campfire near the barn. The kids roasted marshmallows, laughter filled the air, and for a moment, The world felt like it had gone back in time. Before the fame, before the fights, before the fractures. Amy leaned against Chris, smiling at the children running through the grass. Matt sat nearby, watching with a calm expression. Not regretful, not bitter, just content. Zach raised a glass of cider. To new beginnings, and to not giving up on each other. They all raised their glasses. The sound of them clinking together echoed softly into the night, blending with the hum of crickets and the crackle of firewood. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, Matt walked to the edge of the field, looking out over the moonlit land. He thought of everything that had happened, the betrayal, the trials, the losses, and realized that somehow, through all the pain, the farm had found its way back to what it was always meant to be. Not just a piece of land, but a living story of redemption. He whispered to the wind, "We made it." And for the first time in years, the wind seemed to whisper back, gently, as if the land itself agreed. Roloff Farms had been broken, burned, and rebuilt. But now, it stood as a symbol of something eternal, that families, no matter how divided, can always begin again. The seasons turned once more. Roloff Farms, once scared by conflict, now bloomed with life. Flowers in full color, children's laughter echoing through the open fields, and the scent of hope drifting through the Oregon air. Nearly a year had passed since the Roloff Family Foundation began, already helping hundreds. Small farmers gaining support, children learning sustainability, and families with disabilities finding strength in the Roloff story. To visitors, it wasn't just a farm anymore. It was a symbol of second chances. And to the Roloffs, it was finally home again. On a warm July morning, the family gathered near the big red barn, where it had all begun. Amy stood beside Matt, while Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob sat nearby with their families, their kids playing in the dirt. Matt held a folder in his hands, the foundation's long-term trusteeship papers. "I've been thinking," he began, voice steady but full of emotion. "I won't be here forever. And when I'm gone, I don't want this place to fade. I want it to live through all of you." The family fell silent. "This farm used to be my dream," Matt continued. "Then it became our battle. But now, it's our purpose. I'm passing it to you, not as property, but as promise." Zach blinked. "You mean we're taking over?" Matt smiled. "Not taking over, carrying it forward." Amy placed a hand on his shoulder. "That's how it should be. The farm was never meant to belong to one person. It was meant to belong to all of us." In the months that followed, each child brought new life to the legacy. Zach and Tori started a mentorship program for children with disabilities. Jeremy expanded the foundation's reach online, turning their story into a global message of resilience. Molly managed the finances with care, while Jacob quietly tended the land, the heart of it all. "They're not just running the farm," Amy often said. "They're growing its soul." At the first Harvest of Hope Festival anniversary, the family stood before a crowd of hundreds. The sunset painted the sky gold as Matt stepped to the microphone. "Roloff Farms has seen love, loss, and redemption," he said. "But through it all, one truth remained. Family can rebuild anything. If you take one message home tonight, let it be this: you can always start again." Applause rippled through the crowd. Amy joined him on stage, their hands meeting briefly in quiet peace. Behind them stood their children, the next generation, ready to lead. As twilight settled, the festival lights flickered on, music rose, and laughter filled the night. Later, Matt stood under the stars, gazing over the glowing fields. "It's theirs now," he whispered, "exactly as it should be." Amy joined him softly. "We did it, Matt. After everything, we did it." He smiled. "No, they did." Together, they looked out over the land that had defined their lives, no longer a battleground, but a legacy. And as the wind swept gently through the trees, Roloff Farms whispered its own promise into the night. The story will never end. It will just keep growing. The final sunset over Roloff Farms. The sun sets once more over Roloff Farms. The fields lie quiet, golden beneath the twilight, the barn glowing softly on the horizon. For decades, this land has seen it all. Laughter, heartbreak, betrayal, forgiveness. And through it all, the Roloffs found their way back, not as the perfect TV family, but as real people who refused to let pain define them. Matt rebuilt his life piece by piece. Amy found peace, not by winning, but by letting go. Their children learned that true strength isn't about standing alone. It's about finding your way home. Now, as the wind whispers across the Oregon fields, their story lives on. The story of two dreamers and the land that shaped them. But it leaves us wondering, what does it mean to forgive someone who's broken your heart? Is it for them or for yourself? When love fades but respect remains, can two souls still rebuild something real? If legacy isn't measured in money or land, perhaps it's in the peace we leave behind. The Roloffs learned that life isn't about clinging to what's lost. It's about finding the courage to begin again. Maybe that's what Little People, Big World truly stands for. Not fame, but family. Not perfection, but perseverance. And as night settles over the farm, one question remains. If you stood here, where dreams were born, where hearts were broken, and where forgiveness finally took root, what would you choose to remember? The pain that tore them apart, or the grace that brought them home? Because in the end, every family, no matter how flawed or fractured, deserves one more chance to grow. And sometimes, the greatest harvest comes after the storm. More update. LPBW Matt Roloff finally sells home after being dumped by Caryn. And are Amy Roloff and Chris Marek faking it for the cameras? Tori Roloff breaks silence about secretly having twins. And insiders reveal shocking reason behind Matt and Caryn's split. I will explain everything. Little People, Big World star Matt Roloff recently took a significant step after his heartbreaking breakup with Caryn Chandler. The parent and TLC star recently sold his house in the midst of all the heartache and other issues he has been facing. What more are we aware of regarding this most recent development? Despite the fact that many Little People, Big World viewers still dislike Caryn Chandler, many people grew to admire her over time since it felt like her love for Matt Roloff was sincere. After years of dating, Roloff family followers thought the couple would eventually tie the knot after they had already become engaged. However, Matt Roloff's announcement on social media that he and Caryn Chandler had split up surprised a lot of Little People, Big World followers. Although Matt presented the divorce as friendly, insiders told a quite different tale. The process of ending a long-term relationship is never simple. Being a public figure makes this even more difficult. Fans of Little People, Big World have been following Matt Roloff's updates to see what he would do when he and Caryn split up. In accordance with the most recent rumors, Matt Roloff formally sold his Arizona home. Matt would frequently visit Arizona to spend time with Caryn, as fans well aware. He sold his secretly owned 2,300 square foot home in Surprise, a city in Maricopa County, according to the U.S. Sun, though, so it appears that he is officially ending this chapter for good. For $375,000, the residence was bought in 2018. As it happens, it was put on sale around a month ago. It was swiftly bought for $545,000 by a buyer. Even yet, this purchase price was $20,000 less than the asking price, which was still a good profit when compared to what Matt originally paid for the house. But after this breakup with Caryn Chandler, it makes sense that Matt decided to permanently sell this house in Arizona. The property has a closed-in, 2 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms, among other things. There's a raised private lot, a large covered patio with a built-in bar and barbecue, and a 2.5-car garage. How do you feel about Matt Roloff selling his Arizona house after he and Caryn Chandler split up? Please share your opinions in the space provided below. LPBW Are Amy Roloff and Chris Marek faking it for the cameras? Big world celebrities from Little People for a while now, Amy Roloff and Chris Marek have been weed. Is it possible that the couple is acting for the TLC cameras? Some viewers appear to agree. As fans of Little People, Big World, and TLC in general are aware, the network has a history of exaggerating some aspects of filming to support a specific storyline. Several fans felt that Amy Roloff and Chris Marek's scenes, especially their confessionals, are a bit too staged. One watcher of Little People, Big World, even likened their confessionals to a couple's therapy session, stating that they are acting perfectly and continuing as though nothing is ever wrong. This image, in the opinion of some viewers, is implausible and possibly not as authentic as the network would have viewers think. In moments from Little People, Big World, Chris Marek appears to be a sincere individual. Amy Roloff appears to get the care she requires from him. Furthermore, he even shares an unexpected bromance with Matt Roloff, her ex-husband. Chris even made the extra effort to get a tricycle for Jackson Roloff. Despite everything that has been said and done, some Little People Big World fans continue to feel that Chris Marek and his goals are off. Based on all that is posted on social media and on the TLC show, Chris Marek and Amy Roloff appear to be a happy married couple. Still, some viewers remain skeptical. Chris Marek and Amy Roloff have been dating for a long time. Amy even spoils her partner with her baking and home cooking abilities while they travel to far-flung places. The pair is accused of staging it for the cameras by several viewers who don't believe it. Regarding their confessionals in the Little People, Big World sequences, one viewer commented, "They seem determined to reiterate that all is well and they fit so perfectly together, but it vibes as the exact opposite. She brought a lot of money and property with her," according to another LPBW enthusiast. "Chris makes me shiver." According to a third viewer, "I like Chris. Although their relationship appears to be strained, I don't believe there is anything wrong with him specifically." In the event that Little People, Big World gets canceled, it will be intriguing to watch how Amy and Chris' relationship develops away from the cameras. Once they are undoubtedly free from performing and following a certain storyline that TLC may or may not be attempting to promote. LPBW Tori Roloff breaks silence about secretly having twins. Even though LPBW concluded in 2024, viewers are still curious about the star's personal life. Earlier this summer, Matt Roloff declared on social media that he was no longer engaged to Caryn Chandler. Unfortunately, the scoop was not captured by TLC cameras. Later seasons of Little People, Big World included a lot of Tori and Zach Roloff. Did the couple secretly embrace additional children, even though they already had 3? Tori talks about having twins for the first time. See what she had to say by reading on. For many years, the TLC show was Zach and Tori Roloff's primary source of income. Although Tori didn't appear until season 10, it ran for 25 seasons. The beginning of their romance, marriage, and childbirth were all visible to the audience. The family had to find another source of income after the show finished. After years of being a stay-at-home mother, Tori Roloff went back to her old career. She started working as a preschool teacher at Firm Foundation Christian School in Battle Ground, Washington. In 2021, Zach and Tori relocated to Battle Ground from Oregon. When they bid farewell to the Roloff farm, the relocation marked the beginning of the end for LPBW. In 2017, Zach and Tori Roloff welcomed Jackson, their first child. This year was his 8th birthday. In 2019, 5-year-old Lila joined the household. In 2022, the LPBW stars welcomed their 3rd kid, a 3-year-old named Josiah. Their father had achondroplasia, a type of dwarfism, which all 3 children inherited. Tori's physical and emotional well-being suffered during their deliveries. Despite claiming to be childless, Tori Roloff is frequently the focus of pregnancy rumors. Beyond just being pregnant, one online rumor claimed that Tori and Zach had secretly welcomed twins. Images of the LPBW celebrities holding two newborns were featured in the news reports. Tori Roloff responded to rumors that she had secretly welcomed twins on Instagram. "To be honest, I can't use the internet today." On one of the pictures of her and Zach holding twins, she commented, "The number of people who have sent this to me." She dispelled the claims, saying, "No, we did not have secret twins." "The internet is reaching," Tori continued. The victims of phony AI images and news reports are not limited to the LPBW celebs. After multiple news reports surfaced in various Facebook groups, soap opera star Steve Burton was compelled to answer the rumors that he has cancer. These days, AI-generated images are a major issue on social media, and not only for famous people. Regretfully, many people accept false news without doing their own research. Make sure the picture is authentic before sharing it the next time you come across one with an eye-opening headline. LPBW insiders reveal shocking reason behind Matt and Caryn's split. The recent news that Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler have decided to end their long-term relationship has left little people, big world followers in disbelief. Recent revelations, however, revealed the real reason for this breakup, suggesting that there is yet more to unearth in this case. Fans of Little People, Big World have witnessed Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler's long-term relationship. Their relationship eventually developed into something more after they worked together on Roloff Farms. Prior to the TLC program's cancellation following season 25, cameras even saw Caryn showing off her engagement ring and other accessories. Originally, the Little People, Big World couple intended to get married in Hawaii in 2024. In order for Matt to concentrate on caring for his mother as she became older, this was eventually put on hold. Nevertheless, according to recent rumors, Matt and Caryn are officially no longer together, and their Hawaiian wedding will no longer take place. Using social media to inform his large following of the separation, Matt Roloff stated that he and Caryn made the decision to part ways and eventually called it quits on their engagement. "This choice," Matt continued, "is the right step for us at this time. The divorce is amicable," he said, and he also thanked his numerous Little People Big World supporters for their unwavering support during this trying time. Many viewers of Little People Big World didn't like this partnership. However, most people did not anticipate it ending this way either, given how long Matt and Caryn had been together. According to a recent Little People Big World insider, Matt Roloff recently constructed a picture online that this split with Caryn Chandler is mutual, but they are presenting an entirely other picture. An insider recently discussed the topic with the U.S. Sun, saying, "Caryn started the split, but they are publicly claiming it was mutual after having problems for a while. Both of them are going through an extremely trying moment, and they have a lot of things to work out in the upcoming weeks and months. They had been discussing the wedding for so long, and it was postponed multiple times, but they still hadn't decided on a date," the insider continued. Following this breakup, the insider stated, "The family has been caught off guard. They didn't anticipate this. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you."